Alex, it feels like ages since we last properly caught up outside of just quick messages. How have you been settling into, well, whatever the new normal is for work these days? It still feels like it's constantly shifting.
Myra, tell me about it. Constantly shifting is the perfect way to put it. One minute you think you've got a routine figured out, the next there's a new policy, a new tool, or just a different vibe in the air. But overall, I'm adapting, I guess. It's been a mix, some definite upsides, but also some real challenges to navigate. How about you? How's the work landscape looking from your perspective?
Much the same, honestly. It's fascinating, isn't it? We went from this massive, sudden shift to remote work for so many people, and now it feels like we're in this experimental phase, trying to figure out the optimal blend. Hybrid models, fully remote, return to office mandates. It's all over the place. I remember the initial chaos, trying to set up a functional workspace at home, juggling internet issues, background noise. It was intense.
Oh, the initial chaos. I remember it vividly. My dining table became my command center overnight, trying to have serious video calls while my neighbor decided that exact moment was perfect for some heavy-duty drilling. Character building, let's call it. But beyond the logistical hurdles, the psychological adjustment was significant too, wasn't it? Going from the structured environment of an office, the commute acting as a mental buffer, to suddenly having your living space and workspace merge completely.
Absolutely. That blurring of boundaries has been one of the biggest themes for me. Initially, the lack of commute was glorious. An extra hour of sleep, or time for a morning walk. Fantastic. But then, creepingly, work started bleeding into personal time. Checking emails late at night, feeling like you should always be on, because your office was literally 3 steps away. It took real conscious effort to reestablish those boundaries. Did you find that too?
100%. The always-on culture definitely got amplified. Without the physical act of leaving the office, the mental switch-off became much harder. I found myself working longer hours initially, partly out of guilt, partly because the work was just there. I had to become much more disciplined about setting specific work hours, shutting down the laptop, and physically moving away from my work zone at the end of the day. Sometimes, even just changing clothes helped signal that transition.
That's a good tip, the clothes changing. It's those little rituals, isn't it? Like faking the commute, going for a walk before starting work, and another one after finishing. It sounds a bit silly, but it helps create that mental separation. But let's talk productivity. There was so much debate initially. Would people be more or less productive at home? What's your take now, with more experience?
It's nuanced, I think. For focused, deep work, I find being at home incredibly productive. Fewer interruptions from colleagues dropping by, less ambient office noise. I can really get into the zone. When I need to write a complex report or code something intricate, home is often better. However, for spontaneous collaboration, quick brainstorming sessions, or just feeling the pulse of the team, the office environment still has an edge. Those serendipitous encounters by the coffee machine can spark ideas you wouldn't get on a scheduled Zoom call.
I completely agree with that distinction. Deep work, yes. Home wins for me too. But the collaborative aspect is trickier remotely. We've gotten good at using tools. Slack, Teams, Miro boards, you name it. But it requires more deliberate effort. You can't just lean over your desk and ask a quick question or sketch something on a whiteboard together easily. Everything needs to be scheduled or typed out. It can slow things down sometimes, or feel less organic.
Definitely more deliberate. And Zoom fatigue is a real phenomenon. Back-to-back video calls are far more draining than back-to-back in-person meetings somehow. Staring at a screen, trying to read virtual body language, dealing with potential tech glitches. It takes a different kind of energy. I've learned to build short breaks between calls just to look away from the screen and stretch.
Same here. And I've become much more selective about which meetings need to be video calls versus what could be a quick audio call or even just a Slack message. Not everything requires seeing each other's faces, especially if it's just a quick check-in. But thinking about the team aspect further, How do you think remote and hybrid work has impacted company culture and team cohesion? That sense of belonging?
That's a massive challenge, possibly one of the biggest. Building and maintaining a strong company culture when people aren't physically together regularly is tough. Onboarding new hires remotely, for example. How do they absorb the unspoken norms, build relationships, and really feel part of the team? Virtual social events can feel a bit forced sometimes, can they? A virtual happy hour isn't quite the same as grabbing a drink after work together.
Not quite the same. No. Though some companies have gotten creative with virtual team-building activities, online escape rooms, virtual cooking classes, things like that. They can be fun, but they still require that extra layer of organization, and often happen during work hours, which can feel like just another meeting. I think trust becomes even more critical in a remote or hybrid setup. Managers need to trust their teams are working effectively without constant oversight, and team members need to trust each other to pull their weight and communicate proactively.
Trust is the cornerstone, absolutely. The old model of management by walking around just doesn't work anymore. It has forced a shift towards focusing on outcomes rather than hours clocked in, which I actually think is a positive development overall. Judge people by the quality and timeliness of their work, not by whether they look busy at their desk. But this requires clear goals, good communication channels, and managers who are skilled in leading remote teams, which is a different skill set.
It really is. It requires more intentional communication, regular check-ins that are supportive rather than purely supervisory, and creating opportunities for informal connection. I also think it's highlighted the importance of asynchronous communication, being able to contribute to a project or discussion on your own schedule, rather than needing everyone to be available at the exact same time. This is crucial for flexibility and for working across different time zones.
Asynchronous work is key, especially for global teams or even just teams where people have different preferred working hours or personal commitments. Tools like shared documents, project management software, and platforms where conversations are threaded and searchable become indispensable. It reduces the need for constant real-time meetings and allows people to contribute thoughtfully when they are most focused. But it requires discipline in documentation and clarity in communication. Leaving vague requests or updates just creates confusion down the line.
So true. Clarity and context are everything in written communication when you lose the nuances of tone and body language. I've definitely spent more time crafting emails and messages carefully than I used to. But let's shift back to the hybrid model, which seems to be where many companies are landing. What do you see as the ideal balance? How many days in the office? How many at home? Does a fixed schedule work, or should it be more flexible?
The million-dollar question. I don't think there's a single one-size-fits-all answer. It depends so much on the industry, the specific job roles, the team's needs, and individual preferences. Some roles, like lab work or certain types of manufacturing, obviously require a physical presence. For many knowledge workers, though, a hybrid approach seems appealing. Maybe 2 to 3 days in the office per week. Enough time for face-to-face collaboration, team meetings, and relationship building, but still retaining the flexibility and focus time that remote work offers.
I lean towards that kind of balance too. The key, I think, is intentionality. Why are people coming into the office? If it's just to sit on video calls all day in a different location, that defeats the purpose. Office days should be structured around activities that genuinely benefit from co-location. Collaborative workshops, team brainstorming, social events, mentoring sessions. It's about making the commute worthwhile.
Exactly. The office needs to become a destination, a hub for specific types of interaction, rather than just a default place to be from 9 to 5. Some companies are redesigning their office spaces to reflect this. More collaborative zones, fewer individual desks, better technology for hybrid meetings where both in-person and remote participants feel equally included. That last point is crucial. Avoiding a two-tier system where remote employees feel like second-class citizens.
Oh, the hybrid meeting challenge. Ensuring everyone can hear, see, and contribute equally is tough. The technology is getting better, with smart cameras and microphones, but it also requires good facilitation skills from the meeting leader to actively draw in remote participants and make sure the conversation isn't dominated by those physically in the room. Have you experienced good or bad examples of this?
I've seen both. The bad examples are painful. Remote people struggling to hear, side conversations happening in the room that they miss, feeling like they're just watching a meeting rather than participating in it. The good examples usually involve strong tech setups, clear meeting protocols, like everyone using their laptop audio even if they're in the room, and a facilitator who consciously bridges the gap, maybe using virtual whiteboards or chat functions effectively alongside the verbal discussion. It takes effort.
It really does. And what about the impact on career progression and visibility? There's a concern that those who are physically present in the office more often might have an advantage. More face time with senior leaders, more opportunities for informal networking, being top of mind for new projects or promotions. Is proximity bias a real threat in the hybrid world?
I think it's a very real threat if companies aren't careful. It's natural human tendency, perhaps, to connect more easily with those you see regularly. Organizations need to actively combat this. Performance metrics should be based purely on results and impact, regardless of location. Opportunities for high visibility projects should be allocated fairly. Leaders need to make a conscious effort to connect with and mentor remote team members just as much as those in the office. It requires a deliberate strategy for equitable career development.
Agreed. It ties back to that need for intentionality in everything. Communication, collaboration, culture building, and career development. Nothing can be left to chance or assumed in a distributed workforce. It requires a more structured and thoughtful approach to management and operations. On a different note, what about the tools themselves? We've mentioned Slack, Zoom, etc. Do you feel like we have the right tools now? Or is there still room for innovation?
There's always room for innovation. The current tools are functional, but sometimes it feels like we're just replicating office processes online. I wonder about tools that could better facilitate that spontaneous, serendipitous interaction we miss from the office, or tools that integrate different functions more seamlessly, reducing the need to constantly switch between apps. And maybe tools that help manage digital overload and promote better work-life balance. Automatically snoozing. Notifications outside work hours, for instance.
Ooh, tools that actively help manage boundaries would be amazing. Imagine your work apps just gently fading out at your designated finish time. That would be helpful. I also think there's potential for better virtual reality, VR, or augmented reality, AR applications for work. Not necessarily full metaverse meetings all the time, but maybe for things like virtual onboarding tours, collaborative design sessions on 3D models, or more immersive training experiences. It's still early, days, but the potential is there to bridge the physical distance in more engaging ways.